Karen swept into our lives like a summer breeze, charming, dazzling, impossible to ignore. She revived our quiet home with laughter, elegant dinners, and a warmth we hadn't felt since his mother left. She listened to my rambling stories from the lumberyard, praised my roses with a smile that could melt stone. For a moment, I let myself believe I'd found the daughter I never had. Her engagement to Michael, my son, was pure magic, twinkling lights, laughter echoing beneath the old oaks, promises of a bright future. But perfection has a way of cracking. Karen's warmth faded, replaced by icy glances and clipped words. The questions stopped. The casseroles vanished. I blamed stress, ambition, anything but the truth. Then, at my retirement party, beneath the hum of music and clinking glasses, I heard her voice, sharp, mocking. "He's such a pest. Always meddling, always there." The word stung deeper than any wound. All her kindness had been a mask. That night, as shadows crept across the walls, a single, dangerous thought took root. I knew what I had to do. But as the dust settles, I wonder, what did I truly lose in seeking revenge? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments section where you are listening from. My name is Joseph Carter. I'm 63 years old. Michael practically glowed, radiating a joy I hadn't witnessed since his promotion. He ushered Karen into the house, practically vibrating with anticipation, a kid parading his prized new possession. She was striking, yes, but not conventionally pretty. Her allure lay in shrewd, keen eyes and a rapid, intelligent smile. Her attire bespoke impeccable taste, even for a laid-back Sunday meal. "Dad, this is Karen Davis," Michael announced, his hand claiming her arm. "Karen, my dad, Joseph." A flawlessly sculpted hand extended. "A genuine pleasure to finally meet you, Mr. Carter." Her handshake was firm, assertive. Perhaps too much so. I dismissed the formality. "Joseph, please. Welcome to the family, Karen." And initially, she cultivated that impression. She tried, I'll grant her that. She inquired about my garden, even faking fascination with my endless tales of neighborhood kids and errant baseballs. Her first Thanksgiving apple pie was a disaster, yet the effort resonated. She even won over Martha, my sister, a woman with an uncanny knack for detecting falsehood. Then came the subtle shift, like the slow leaching of color from faded denim. It began with trivialities. A quizzical lift of an eyebrow at my mispronunciation. A near-silent sigh during one of my lengthy anecdotes. Then the veiled digs arrived. "That's quite the tie, Joseph." Or, "Michael mentioned you were an athlete in your younger years." One wouldn't guess it now. Michael, dear soul, remained oblivious. He was infatuated, utterly blind to her little jabs. He saw only the brilliant facade, the relentless ambition, the sparkling wit. He failed to discern the calculating light in her eyes, the way she appraised every room, every individual, assessing their worth, their utility. One afternoon, during a tour of my workshop, a space I'd meticulously crafted over years, I presented a recently completed birdhouse. "Thoughts?" I asked, offering it. She accepted it, rotating it slowly. "It's rustic," she stated, her voice devoid of inflection. "Planning to sell these at a bazaar or something?" The remark stung, the impact amplified by her delivery, as if my hobby were a childish distraction beneath her regard. I managed a strained smile. "Just something to occupy my time." Later, eavesdropping on her phone call with Michael, I heard her say, "His house is so dated, darling. Begging for a complete redo." And that workshop. It's like stepping into a time capsule. I urged myself to disregard it. She was young, driven, with disparate tastes. But the words festered, an irritant refusing to heal. It wasn't merely the house. It was me, too. I was archaic. I was homespun. I was something to be endured, not admired. The initial warmth was receding, replaced by something frigid, something cutting. Something I found increasingly difficult to swallow. Dinner and daggers. The dining room felt less like a hearth for familial warmth, and more like a stage set for tragedy. The chandelier, usually a sunburst of light, slashed the mahogany with elongated, spectral shapes. Martha's silver, gleaming to excess, seemed to amplify the taut atmosphere instead of reflecting merriment. My best suit, the one she used to praise as conferring distinction, felt restrictive, a stiff armor for a skirmish I dreaded. Michael, ever the peacemaker, offered cheerful narratives of workplace antics, tales of eccentric colleagues and minor victories. Karen, in response, presented a frozen smile, her gaze flitting about as if assessing the room's resale value. She toyed with the perfectly roasted chicken, as if it were some strange, unappetizing thing. "So, Karen," I began, striving to inject conviviality, "Michael mentioned you're being considered for a promotion." "Yes," she clipped, her tone precise. "A significant advancement. It demands a particular investment." I swallowed the retort that Michael was equally devoted, perhaps more so. This was not the moment for a dissertation on ethics or diligence. The conversation faltered, punctuated by stilted pauses and brittle laughter. I found myself observing Karen with acute attention, registering each subtle gesture of disapproval. The slight upturn of her lip at the vintage wine, the almost imperceptible exhalation when I spoke of the historical society, each a tiny barb, slowly draining my reserves of confidence. Then came the question I'd anticipated with dread, hovering like a noxious gas. "Joseph," Karen began, her voice laced with a sugary coating that made my skin crawl. "When do you foresee fully stepping back? You've certainly more than earned it." Michael squirmed, his eyes begging her to desist. But Karen was relentless, her gaze locked on mine, unwavering. "I mean," she pressed, "isn't it time for the next generation to take charge? To let things evolve beyond the past?" An icy dread seeped into my bones. It wasn't merely the query, but the patronizing tone, the barely veiled disdain in her eyes. It was as if she viewed me as an obstacle, a fossil hindering her and Michael's rise. "I'm not quite ready for the scrap heap, Karen," I countered, my voice a low rumble. "I still have something valuable to offer." "Oh, I'm sure you believe you do," she purred, her smile broadening, though her eyes remained glacial. "But perhaps your ideas are antiquated. A touch decrepit, perhaps." The word hung in the air, laden with venom. The room seemed to constrict, the shadows deepening, the silence magnifying the insult. Michael gasped, his face reflecting utter dismay. A sharp stab of pain resonated in my chest, a visceral humiliation unlike any I'd felt since childhood. I stared, my mind struggling to process the audacity. Decrepit. She had dared to deem me decrepit. In my own domain, before my own son. The sheer, breathtaking impudence. My hands knotted into tight fists beneath the cover of the table. The carefully constructed veneer of civility shattered, exposing the simmering fury that had been fermenting for weeks. I yearned to explode, to retaliate, to erase that self-satisfied smirk from her face. But I resisted. I couldn't yield control. Not yet. Instead, I drew a slow breath, forcing composure, camouflaging the rage threatening to engulf me. I would bide my time, patiently anticipate my chance. And then, she would suffer. Profoundly. False peace. The clatter of silverware against china echoed in the sudden silence. I swallowed, forcing down the lump in my throat. "Well," I said, a touch too loudly, that was certainly direct. Michael, bless his heart, looked like he wanted to disappear into the plush carpet. He shot Karen a pleading glance, his usual placid features etched with worry. Karen, on the other hand, merely dabbed at her lips with a napkin, her expression unreadable. "Dad," Michael began, his voice tight, "Karen didn't mean." "Of course, she didn't," I interrupted, perhaps a bit too quickly. "Karen is simply passionate about her work. About the future of Carter Enterprises." I even managed a strained smile. A brittle, papery thing that probably fooled no one. I tried to rationalize it. Karen was ambitious, yes, sometimes brutally so. But perhaps, just perhaps, she was also right. Was I clinging to the reins, stifling innovation, becoming the very thing I swore I never would, a doddering old man out of touch with the times? The thought stung, a fresh wound on top of the insult. The ride home was a silent torment. Michael, ever the peacemaker, attempted a few awkward conversational gambits, but I deflected them with noncommittal grunts. Karen remained a cool, composed statue beside him. I dropped them off at their meticulously landscaped house, the kind that screamed, new money, and drove back to my own, the old stone manor that whispered of generations past. Inside, the familiar scent of beeswax and old leather usually brought a sense of comfort. Tonight, it felt suffocating. I poured myself a generous measure of scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, mirroring the turmoil in my gut. Decrepit. The word echoed in my head, a sharp, ugly thing. Was that how she truly saw me? A relic, fit only for the museum? The scotch burned going down, doing little to soothe the fire in my chest. I paced the length of my study, the Persian rug absorbing the sound of my agitated steps. Forgiveness. That's what Michael would want. Turn the other cheek. Be the bigger man. But the bigger man was tired. Tired of being diplomatic, of swallowing insults, of playing the gracious patriarch. The bigger man wanted to lash out, to show that viper where she belonged. Revenge. The word tasted bitter on my tongue, yet strangely, satisfying. It was a dark, seductive whisper promising relief from this gnawing feeling of inadequacy. I thought of my late wife, Eleanor. She would have known exactly what to do, how to diffuse the situation with grace and a well-placed barb. Eleanor would have never let anyone disrespect me in my own home. But Eleanor was gone, and I was left to navigate this treacherous new world alone. I stared out the window at the moonlit gardens, a labyrinth of manicured hedges and blooming roses. A labyrinth, much like the one in my own mind. Which path would I choose? The path of forgiveness, of quiet dignity? Or the darker, more tempting path of retribution? The scotch was almost gone, but the answer remained elusive, shrouded in a fog of anger and wounded pride. The false peace I had attempted to construct at dinner lay shattered, the shards glinting like dangerous jewels in the moonlight. Accidental discovery. Rain lashed down, turning the city lights into smeared, spectral glows. Of course, the umbrella was home, forgotten. Another late night grappling with quarterly reports, a growing unease about Carter Enterprises gnawing at me. It was absurd how one woman, practically a stranger, could unravel my carefully constructed world. Spurning a car service, I opted to walk, finding a perverse solace in the downpour superior to the stifling confines of a chauffeured ride and my circling thoughts. My shortcut took me through the park, where the rain-slicked cobblestones threatened to send me sprawling. That's when I noticed them. Initially, a vague form beneath the gaslight's stuttering illumination, two figures intertwined. Then, lightning ripped across the sky, searing the image into my mind with painful clarity. Karen. Unmistakable in her cardinal coat, embracing a man who definitively wasn't Michael. The air caught in my throat. The rain seemed to intensify, each drop a frigid condemnation. Rooted to the spot, I was an unwilling spectator in my own domestic drama. Their kiss was deep, lingering, a language of intimacy and desire. A connection Michael likely never knew. A wave of sickness churned within me, giving way to a slow-burning anger, hotter than any rage I'd previously known. This wasn't mere disrespect, it was a betrayal of epic proportions. To Michael, to me, to our entire family. A fleeting flicker of, something akin to pity, rose within. What drove her to such an act? Was she so profoundly unhappy? But the burgeoning empathy was quickly consumed by the inferno of my wrath. Compassion was a luxury I couldn't then afford. I retreated silently, each step deliberate, the rain a convenient shroud, erasing any sign of my presence. There was nothing more to witness. The memory of their embrace was permanently etched in my consciousness, a constant reminder of her duplicity. Arriving home, drenched and trembling, the anger had transformed into a steely resolve. The uncertainty that had lingered after dinner had evaporated, replaced by crystalline determination. Michael's path of forgiveness? Unthinkable. That night, beneath the storm's relentless assault, I discovered my own path. Vengeance. I possessed the weapon I needed. The knowledge that would obliterate their carefully crafted illusion. The proof that would reveal Karen's true nature. I made my way directly to my study, poured a generous amount of scotch, and settled down at my computer. The rain continued its relentless barrage against the windows, the soundtrack to my hardening resolve. A plan needed shaping, a strategy to be enacted. It wouldn't be admirable. It wouldn't be without complications. But it would be effective. Karen had launched the first attack. Now, it was my turn. And I intended to make it devastating. The web of revenge. The rain had stopped, but the city exhaled a damp, greasy breath. Back in my apartment, the glow of the monitor was a stark contrast to the gloom outside. I replayed the scene from earlier, blown up on the screen. Karen, her face tilted up, accepting a kiss from a man who wasn't Michael. Each replay was a fresh jolt, a reminder of the disrespect, the deception. It was more than just infidelity, it was a calculated charade played right under my nose. Over the next few days, I became a shadow. My retirement provided the perfect cover for my newfound obsession. I tracked Karen's movements, a silent, watchful predator. The early morning yoga classes, the midday, business lunches, the late evenings at the office. Each outing was meticulously documented. My camera, a high-end model I'd initially bought for birdwatching, now served a far more sinister purpose. The lens became my weapon. I captured stolen moments, a lingering touch on an arm, a shared glance filled with unspoken promises, clandestine meetings in dimly lit bars. I amassed a damning collection, a visual indictment of her betrayal. I felt a grim satisfaction as each new image confirmed my suspicions, each photo a brick in the wall I was building around her lies. It wasn't just about the affair itself, it was about the ease with which she deceived us all. The casual dismissals, the saccharine smiles, the practiced air of innocence. It was all a performance, and I, the unwitting audience, had finally seen behind the curtain. My anger simmered, a slow, corrosive burn. I needed to be precise. Random exposure would be messy, chaotic. I wanted maximum impact with minimal fallout, for Michael, at least. Karen deserved everything she was about to get. I created a burner email account, the digital equivalent of a whispered threat in the dark. The subject line, things Michael should know. Inside, I attached a selection of the most incriminating photos. A brief, anonymous message accompanied them, thought you should see this. She's not who you think she is. Simple, direct, devastating. Next, her boss. A separate email, different photos. This time, the message was more pointed. Is this the kind of behavior you condone in your employees? Perhaps Mr. Henderson should be aware of Ms. Davis's dedication to her extracurricular activities. I included photos of her and her lover at the bar, faces clearly visible. I knew her company had a strict policy about relationships with clients. I'd casually overheard her mentioning it once. I scheduled both emails to send late at night, maximizing the shock value. The digital deed done, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and trepidation. The web of revenge was spun, and now all I could do was wait for the inevitable unraveling. I told myself it was justice, that I was protecting my son. But deep down, a nagging voice whispered that this was about more than just Michael. It was about evening the score, about punishing her for daring to disrespect me, for making me feel like a fool. The taste of vengeance was bitter, but intoxicating. I took a long swig of scotch, the burn a welcome distraction from the gnawing unease in my gut. Tomorrow, the storm would break. And Karen would finally pay the price. The first blow. The send button blazed, a malevolent star promising destruction. My thumb, slick with a nervous sweat, wavered above it. The email below, a digital IED, primed to detonate Karen Davis's carefully constructed existence. Eyes shut, I saw Michael's open, trusting face imprinted on the darkness. His guileless smile, the adoration he showered on Karen. A sharp stab of conscience, was this truly for him? Or a selfish act, fueled by years of simmering resentment? Karen's mocking face flashed, "You're obsolete, Joseph. A relic." The scorn sharpened my resolve. This wasn't only about Michael, it was about boundaries, respect. It was about demonstrating consequence. Safeguarding my family. My thumb plunged. The email vanished, hurtling into the digital void, its payload armed. The deed concluded, a wave of sickness rolled over me. The leather chair groaned as I pushed away. The room felt frigid, antiseptic. The computer's hum, previously unnoticed, now throbbed in my ears. I moved to the window, my gaze drawn to Mary's meticulously kept garden. Serenity reigned on the surface, unaware of the turmoil unleashed beneath. I tried to envision Michael's reaction, the initial shock, the blossoming disbelief, the inevitable heartbreak. Would he seek me out? Would he understand the motivation behind my actions? Or would he only perceive a villain, a meddling patriarch who had shattered his world? Devastation was unavoidable, I conceded. But, I reasoned, in time he would recognize Karen's true nature, escaping her web of deceit. The rationale echoed hollowly, even to me. A small, dissenting voice within recoiled at my action. But the dominant force, fueled by long-held bitterness and primal protectiveness, remained steadfast. I imagined Karen's professional persona shattering in the sterile environment of her workplace, her carefully curated image demolished before colleagues. Mr. Henderson, her blustering boss, reading the irrefutable evidence. The humiliation, the downfall, the swift dismissal. A flicker of dark satisfaction sparked, then faded. She had earned this. Yet, even as I grasped at that justification, a seed of uncertainty took root. Had I misjudged? What if Michael, instead of finding liberation, was irrevocably scarred? What if this act splintered our family beyond repair? The thought triggered a shiver, a chilling foreboding of the tempest to come. I had initiated a storm. Could I possibly weather it? Shattered trust. The email glared from Michael's laptop screen, its darkness mirrored in the shock widening his eyes. Each word was a hammer blow as he scrolled through it again. The particulars were too precise, too damning to be dismissed. Dates, names, locales, each detail locked into place with grim certainty. A throbbing ache blossomed behind his eyes. He fought the urge to roar, to demolish something, but found himself frozen. The printer rattled off the email, its mechanical whine a frantic pulse in the otherwise still apartment. The paper felt flimsy, a woefully inadequate vessel for the poison it contained. He folded it with meticulous care, a gesture more suited to a sacred object than a damning indictment. In the kitchen, Karen hummed a tuneless melody as she diced vegetables. The mingled scent of alliums, typically a comfort, now felt oppressive, almost suffocating. He scrutinized her, his gaze heavy with a newly born suspicion. The unstudied grace of her smile, the subtle sway of her hips, were they calculated performances, practiced for an audience of one? He entered the kitchen, the folded paper a leaden weight in his palm. Karen, we need to talk. She turned, her smile broadening. Hey, sweetie. Dinner's almost ready. What's going on? She reached to brush a stray lock from his forehead, but he recoiled. Her smile flickered. Michael? What is it? He extended the paper. Read this. She accepted it, a crease forming between her brows. As she scanned the text, the blood seemed to drain from her face. The humming ceased, leaving a vacuum of strained silence. Her hands began to tremble, the paper rustling like brittle leaves. Michael. She looked up, her eyes wide with dawning terror. That's not the truth. Isn't it? His voice was a monotone, devoid of feeling. He felt strangely removed, as if witnessing a drama played out by strangers. The dates, the places, they corroborate. Don't compound things by lying. I can explain, she stammered, her voice fracturing. It's not what you imagine. Then enlighten me, he pressed, his voice hardening. Tell me what I should imagine, Karen. Tell me why someone would forward this to me if it were false. Her jaw worked silently, then snapped shut. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking an invisible exit. It's a mistake. Someone intends to injure me. He gave a short, mirthless laugh. Injure you? By revealing the truth to me? Who benefits from that, Karen? And how would they be privy to such intimate details? I don't know, she cried, tears brimming. I swear to you, Michael, I would never intentionally hurt you. But you have, he murmured, each word edged with pain. You deceived me. You were dishonest. You demolished everything I cherished about us. He pivoted, unable to endure the sight of her anguish. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of shared moments, now felt frigid and sterile. The scent of sautéed garlic had soured, turning his stomach. Where are you going? She asked, her voice trembling precariously. I need space to think, he replied, heading for the door. I need to decide what comes next. He didn't glance back. He couldn't bear to. The image of her face, ravaged by fear and denial, had already seared itself into his memory. He stepped out into the night, the weight in his hand supplanted by a hollowness that threatened to swallow him whole. The city lights swam before his vision, each glittering point a stark reminder of the vibrant future he had pictured, a future that had just been extinguished in a single, devastating moment. Collateral damage. The phone buzzed to life late the following afternoon. Michael's name glared from the screen, a cold fist clenching my gut. I had played this scenario in my head countless times, yet the actual moment carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. Dad, his voice, usually so vibrant, sounded dull, lifeless. I'm leaving. Getting my own place. The declaration landed like a stone, final and irrefutable. A bizarre sense of distance settled over me. Months spent maneuvering, meticulously amassing intel, subtly planting seeds of doubt, had all funneled into this singular point. I should have been ecstatic, triumphant. Instead, a leaden ache settled deep in my bones. Michael, what's wrong? I managed, carefully modulating my tone. I couldn't betray my hand, not now. Wrong is beside the point, Dad. I can't live like this anymore. I can't be with her. A tremor laced his words, an exposed tenderness that resonated within me. Have you spoken with Karen? Tried to salvage things? I already knew the likely outcome. Her personality made her responses predictable. Tried? God, yes. But, it's pointless. I have to go, Dad. I'll explain later. Just needed you to know. The line went dead, replaced by a stark silence that amplified the quiet of the house. I lingered there, phone still gripped in my palm. My objective was achieved. Karen was excised from Michael's existence. She'd paid dearly for her disrespect, for her duplicity. Yet, staring at this barren conquest, I felt no elation, only a yawning emptiness. Later, as dusk deepened, I drove past their home. Darkness shrouded the house, save for a solitary lamp burning in the front room. I imagined Michael inside, boxing up his life, his spirit fractured. Karen, perhaps still in a state of bewilderment, unaware of the extent of the devastation she wrought. The ensuing days passed in a disorienting haze. Michael settled into a cramped downtown apartment. He was subdued, taciturn, his trademark grin conspicuously absent. He parried my inquiries about Karen with evasive replies, a haunted quality in his gaze. I feigned supportive paternal concern, but the words felt tainted, poisoned by my own scheming. Karen, conversely, erupted in a torrent of anger and confusion. My wife relayed that she'd phoned repeatedly, demanding to know what I had told Michael, accusing me of turning him against her. I refused to engage. I had no need to hear her prevarications, her justifications. She had sown the seeds of her own misfortune, and now she was reaping the whirlwind. Soon, the whispers began. Gossip spread like wildfire through our social circles. Michael's departure hadn't gone unnoticed, nor had Karen's increasingly unhinged behavior. The narrative of her infidelity, skillfully engineered by yours truly, gained traction, embellished with each retelling. Her reputation, once meticulously nurtured, was rapidly unraveling. I observed the subtle yet unmistakable shift in people's demeanor toward her at gatherings. The saccharine smiles that failed to reach their eyes. The hushed conversations that ceased abruptly upon her approach. The barely concealed pity. Precisely what I had plotted, yet it yielded no satisfaction. Instead, it resembled witnessing a slow-motion catastrophe, a tragedy unfolding before my eyes, with myself as the engineer, helpless to halt its progress. One evening, I found myself alone in my study, fixated on the framed wedding photo of Michael and Karen. They radiated joy, brimming with optimism. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I had obliterated that. I had seized their happiness and shattered it into shards. Was it worthwhile? Was the pain I had inflicted on my son, on Karen, on my entire family, justified? The answer reverberated in my soul, a resounding no. The triumph I had yearned for proved to be a phantom, a brutal delusion that had led me down a destructive path. And the ensuing consequences were far more catastrophic than I could ever have envisioned. The second target. The digital images seared my conscience, each one a frozen splinter lodging in my already brittle resolve. Karen, radiant with laughter, entangled with a stranger, not Michael. Karen, cheeks flushed, hand in hand with the same man, swallowed by the maw of a hotel entrance. Each captured moment solidified my resolve, forming an impenetrable shield between her and the life she'd so carelessly defiled. I'd grappled with the enormity of this for days. Michael was now unburdened, wasn't he? Surely that was enough. Yet the sting of her cutting remarks, the dismissive wave of her hand, the subtle ways she diminished me in my own son's life, they festered like poison under the skin. This wasn't solely about infidelity, it was about decency, about the sanctity of kin. And she'd offered neither. My fingers trembled above the keyboard. David Sterling. Karen's boss. Ambitious, unyielding, a man whose public image was his sacred creed. The intel flowed readily, almost eagerly, from the internet's hidden streams. A swift search yielded his email, and deeper dives uncovered tales of his iron-fisted approach to anything that threatened Sterling Enterprises' flawless facade. My pulse throbbed in my ears. This felt different. More than just shielding Michael, it was about dispensing a calculated retribution. A frigid injection of reality. I composed a terse, unsigned missive. Subject: concerns regarding employee conduct. The message was spare. Attached are photos that may be of interest to you regarding the conduct of one of your employees, Karen Davis. A concerned citizen. I added the incriminating files. Each mouse click resonated like a pact forged in the abyss. As I stabbed the send button, a tidal wave of sickness rolled through me. This wasn't like guiding Michael toward a healthier horizon. This was vengeance, pure and simple. I tried to justify it. Karen had earned this. Her recklessness had painted her into this corner. She'd paraded her betrayal, scorned my family, and belittled my son. This wasn't about revenge, it was about a delayed reckoning. A harsh verdict, perhaps, but a fitting one nonetheless. I shut my laptop, the snapshots of Karen's transgressions permanently etched into my memory. The quiet in the room was oppressive, broken only by the frantic drumbeat of my own heart. I pictured David Sterling, his face twisting into a mask of incandescent fury as he scrutinized the evidence. I envisioned Karen, summoned to his inner sanctum, her carefully constructed world imploding. A seed of doubt began to sprout. Had I overstepped? Was this truly justice, or just the bitter fruit of my own pain? I suppressed the thought. It was irreversible. The digital bullet had been fired. The damage was inevitable. I repeated the mantra, protecting my family, guaranteeing that Karen would never again have the opportunity to wound Michael, to besmirch our legacy. The house felt desolate, frigid. I poured a measure of scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, mirroring the maelstrom within me. As I swallowed, the fiery cascade scalded my throat, a physical echo of the inferno I'd ignited. I sought refuge in sleep, but it remained elusive. The photos pirouette behind my closed eyes, the faces of Karen and her paramour taunting my faltering rationale. I thrashed, tormented by the memory of my son's bewildered expression, the raw pain etched onto his youthful features. Had I truly helped him, or merely traded his anguish for hers? And what unforeseen price would be extracted for this dubious triumph? I couldn't fathom the answer, but a gnawing premonition told me the cost would be steeper than I could possibly conceive. Professional ruin. The air in Sterling and Croft crackled with a nervous energy that morning, thick enough to taste. Karen noticed it immediately, the sidelong glances from colleagues, the hushed whispers that died the moment she approached. Even Brenda, usually a fountain of office gossip, offered only a tight-lipped smile and a perfunctory, "Morning, Karen." She dismissed it as pre-quarterly review jitters. David Sterling was a notoriously demanding boss, his ambition a relentless engine driving everyone around him. Still, a knot of unease tightened in Karen's stomach. An email from Sterling's assistant summoned her to his office. Immediately, it stated, the single word heavy with unspoken implications. Sterling's office, usually a meticulously curated display of success, the framed diplomas, the panoramic city view, the expensive sculptures, felt different today. The air conditioning seemed to be cranked higher, leaving a chill that seeped into Karen's bones. Sterling himself sat behind his massive desk, his face an impassive mask. The set of his jaw was hard, the light glinting off his rimless glasses. "Karen," he began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "Please, sit." He gestured to the chair across from him, but didn't meet her eyes. Instead, he shuffled a stack of papers on his desk, a nervous tick Karen had never noticed before. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the hum of the air conditioning. "Some concerning material has come to my attention," he finally said, his voice flat. He pushed a manila envelope across the desk. It landed with a soft thud, the sound amplified in the oppressive quiet. Karen stared at the envelope, her heart hammering against her ribs. A cold dread washed over her, a premonition of disaster. She reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside were the photographs. The images screamed accusations. The restaurant, the furtive glances, the lingering touch, the undeniable kiss. Each photograph a nail hammered into the coffin of her career. Sterling watched her, his expression unreadable. The silence was deafening. These are. Karen stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't bring herself to deny them, the evidence was too damning. They speak for themselves, Karen, Sterling interrupted, his voice hardening. I pride myself on maintaining a certain image at Sterling and Croft. A reputation for excellence, integrity, discretion. He paused, his gaze finally locking onto hers. This compromises that image. Severely. He stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. I'm afraid I have no choice. Your employment with Sterling and Croft is terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air, stark and final. Karen felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Years of hard work, dedication, ambition, all reduced to this single, devastating moment. David, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. There's got to be some mistake. I can explain. Sterling held up a hand, cutting her off. There's nothing to explain, Karen. Security will escort you to your office to collect your belongings. Please leave the premises immediately afterward. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The carefully constructed facade of her life was crumbling around her, reduced to rubble in a matter of minutes. As she packed her things, the weight of her actions, the recklessness of her choices, crashed down on her. The hushed whispers of her colleagues followed her like shadows as security escorted her out of the building, the shame burning in her cheeks. She felt the pitying stares, the judgmental glances. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out into the harsh glare of the city, jobless, humiliated, and utterly alone. The taste of ash filled her mouth, the bitter residue of professional ruin. Confrontations and regrets. Michael stood in the doorway of my study, his silhouette framed by the hall light. His shoulders were slumped, a posture I hadn't seen since he was a boy and had scraped his knee falling out of the old oak tree. Dad, he began, his voice tight, I need to talk to you. I swiveled in my chair, the leather creaking in protest. Of course, Michael. Come in, have a seat. I gestured towards the worn armchair beside the fireplace, hoping the familiar gesture would ease the tension radiating from him. He remained standing. Don't you think what happened to Karen is extreme? He finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of disappointment and something akin to fear. I steepled my fingers, a habit I'd picked up during my years in the courtroom. Extreme. She brought it on herself, Michael. Affairs have consequences. But the photos, Dad. Sending them to David Sterling, that's not just consequences. That's vindictive. Did you send them? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. I hesitated. A direct denial felt wrong, even to me. I did what was necessary to protect this family. Michael's face crumpled. Protect? By destroying someone's life? How does that protect anyone? It feels like you're enjoying this, Dad. His words stung more than I cared to admit. Don't be ridiculous, I snapped, perhaps a little too quickly. Karen disrespected this family, disrespected you. I simply addressed the situation. Addressed it? You ruined her, Dad. Her career, her marriage, everything. Michael's voice rose, cracking with emotion. I thought you were better than this. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the echoes of his condemnation. Later that evening, just as I was pouring myself a generous measure of scotch, the doorbell rang. It was Eleanor Thompson, Karen's mother. Her face was etched with worry lines, her normally bright eyes dull and red-rimmed. Joseph, she said, her voice trembling, how could you? I gestured her inside, but she remained on the porch. Karen is devastated. Humiliated. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. And for what? Because of some misguided sense of justice? She hurt Michael, I said, my voice low. She broke her vows. And you thought destroying her life would fix that? You think Michael is happy knowing his wife is out there, alone and jobless, because of you? Eleanor's voice was sharp, laced with a mother's fierce protectiveness. She made a mistake, Joseph. A terrible mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. You could have talked to her, confronted her. Instead, you chose to be cruel. Her words hit their mark. I remembered another mistake, years ago. A business deal gone wrong, a partner betrayed. The memory flashed, the look of hurt and betrayal in his eyes as I pushed him out, securing my own position. Had I become the very thing I despised? She's not perfect, Joseph, Eleanor continued, her voice softening slightly. But she loves Michael. She truly does. And you've taken everything from her. She turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the porch. I always thought you were a good man, Joseph. A strong man. But strength without compassion is just brutality. The scotch burned in my throat. I looked out at the darkening sky, the first stars beginning to glimmer. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind, a relentless chorus of regret. Had I gone too far? Had my desire for retribution blinded me to the consequences of my actions? The face of my former partner swam into focus. His name was Daniel, and we had been friends since childhood. I had justified my betrayal then, telling myself it was business, necessary for survival. But now, looking back, I saw it for what it was, a calculated act of self-preservation at the expense of another human being. Had I learned nothing? Was I doomed to repeat the mistakes of my past, inflicting pain and suffering on those around me in the name of protecting my own interests? The silence of the house pressed in on me, heavy with the weight of my regrets. The long road ahead. The air in the house tasted of dust and unspoken grievances, a heavy sweetness that choked the senses. Karen was in the sunroom, a mausoleum for neglected orchids. She sat bolt upright, a granite statue facing the immaculate green, her expression a frozen landscape of sorrow. My apology, practiced until it bled dry of meaning, felt like ash in my mouth. Karen, I croaked, I wanted to tell you. I'm deeply sorry. She remained a silhouette against the afternoon light. Sorry for what, Joseph? For the exquisite destruction of everything I held dear. Did you savor each brick as it fell? The words emerged like slivers of ice. That wasn't my aim, I said, the defense sounding pathetic even to me. My intentions were to shield Michael, the family. A brittle laugh cracked the stillness. Shield. You pulverized. Did you get a thrill from watching me crumble? No, Karen, absolutely not. I extended a hand, a plea for understanding, but she recoiled as if from a viper. Don't presume to touch me, she spat, her gaze finally locking onto mine, twin blue flames that singed my soul. Just stay away. You've taken enough. My hand dropped, leaden. There were no avenues left. My carefully considered apology had landed like a shroud. Leaving the sunroom, I carried the ghosts of withered blooms on my clothing, a constant, olfactory indictment. Michael was in the garage, polishing his car to a blinding sheen, a ritual normally soothing now performed with desperate, furious energy. The only sound was the whisper of the sponge against the gleaming paint. Michael, I ventured into the dim coolness. He didn't acknowledge me. I spoke with your mother, I offered, the inadequacy of the statement hanging in the air. Still scrubbing, his jaw clenched. And it didn't improve matters. He slammed the sponge into the bucket, the clang echoing in the confined space. Turning, his eyes held Karen's glacial anger, but diluted with a fathomless ache. What did you expect, father? A medal? I know I erred, Michael. Profoundly. My wish was to set things aright. You can't mend this, Dad. Not any of it. You shattered it. You shattered her, you shattered everything. I flinched, the truth a physical blow. I'm aware. And I'm genuinely sorry. Beyond expression. He scrubbed a hand through his already unruly hair, a gesture of utter defeat. I can't fathom you, Dad. Truly. How could you perpetrate this? How could you act with such spite? It wasn't born of spite, Michael, I countered, the words ringing false even to my own ears. It stemmed from allegiance. Protecting the family unit. Allegiance? He scoffed, the sound raw with disbelief. You betrayed everyone, including yourself. He was correct. I had. I acknowledge the enormity of what I must atone for, I said, my voice hushed. I don't anticipate immediate forgiveness. Perhaps not ever. But I long to try. To become a worthier father, a more honorable man. He scrutinized me, attempting to discern a glint of insincerity. I met his gaze, striving to project the regret that consumed me. It's a monumental climb, Dad, he said, his voice drained. Incredibly steep. I understand, I answered. However, I'm prepared to undertake it. The ensuing silence was heavy with shared history, broken vows, a precarious future. But within that oppressive quiet, a spark flickered, the fragile promise of reconciliation. Returning to the house, the dwindling sunlight painted grotesque silhouettes across the manicured lawn. Karen, Michael, the wreckage I'd wrought, they occupied my thoughts. I knew my path towards redemption would be filled with thorns, a landscape of penitence and sorrow. Yet, I had to embark on that path. For them, and for the sake of my own soul. The interminable road stretched before me, intimidating and veiled in uncertainty, but I resolved to traverse it, one arduous step following another. Perhaps, just perhaps, I could retrieve something from the devastation. Perhaps, in time, I could regain their faith. Perhaps. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments, I'd love to hear from you.